Most people don't realize this, but the moment you start chasing a desire, you quietly declare war on it. Not out loud, not consciously, but energetically. The entire culture taught you that wanting something badly is proof of commitment, that hunger equals power, that obsession equals inevitability. Hustle harder, visualize longer, desire more intensely. Yet if that logic actually worked, the most desperate people on earth would be the most fulfilled, and the ones who want least would have nothing. Reality shows the opposite. Those who seem to have everything move with an eerie calm, while those who want the most feel stuck in an endless loop of effort, hope, disappointment, and self-blame. That contradiction is not philosophical. It is mechanical. Desire, when born from lack, is not magnetic. It is repulsive. It signals absence, separation, and incompleteness, and reality responds with mathematical precision. This is why people can chase the same goals for years and feel as if life is running in place. Not because they are unworthy, lazy, or unlucky, but because they are operating in the wrong order of creation. The modern manifestation narrative quietly reinforces this inversion. It tells you to focus on outcomes, to picture the thing, to emotionally attach to a future that does not yet exist. What it rarely explains is that attachment is not alignment, and yearning is not resonance. The nervous system does not interpret intense desire as confidence. It interprets it as threat, urgency, and insufficiency. And the field you project under those conditions is not attractive. It is noisy, contracted, and incoherent. Philosophers, mystics, and modern thinkers have pointed to this without fully translating it into lived mechanics. Even teachers like Bob Proctor hinted at it when they spoke about paradigms and identity, yet most people still try to change results before changing states. The uncomfortable truth is this: everything you want is not pursued, it is permitted. And permission is not mental agreement, it is energetic readiness. The reason this feels threatening is because it strips away the illusion of control. It suggests that effort alone is not the master lever, that force has diminishing returns, and that there is something far more influential than action hiding beneath your behavior. When you look closely, every desire you have is simply a symbol. Money is not money. It is safety, freedom, expansion. Love is not a person. It is resonance, attunement, belonging. Success is not status. It is coherence between who you are and what you express. The tragedy is that people chase the symbols while ignoring the states that generate them. They attempt to harvest fruit without tending the soil, and then wonder why the tree resists them. This video is not about wanting less. It is about understanding why wanting, as you have been taught to do it, is the very thing blocking the flow. Once you see that, something subtle but irreversible happens. Effort softens. Urgency dissolves. And the question shifts from "how do I get what I want?" to something far more dangerous and far more powerful. Who am I being that makes my desires unnecessary to chase? When that shift occurs, the mechanics of reality begin to reorganize themselves quietly, almost invisibly, and what once felt distant starts behaving as if it knows where you are. Good. We move forward from that fracture point because once you accept that desire born from lack repels, the mind immediately tries to compensate. It asks, so if wanting is the problem, should I want nothing? And this is where most teachings collapse into either spiritual bypassing or passive nihilism. The answer is neither. The problem is not desire itself. The problem is where desire is generated from inside you. There is a vast difference between desire as absence and desire as expression. One is hunger. The other is overflow. Hunger tightens the body, sharpens urgency, narrows perception. Overflow relaxes the nervous system, widens awareness, and makes action feel obvious rather than forced. The tragedy is that almost everyone is taught to desire from hunger and then shamed when reality does not respond. When you want something because you believe it will complete you, you silently position yourself beneath it. Psychologically, this installs a hierarchy where the object of desire is powerful and you are not. Energetically, this creates incoherence. Your system broadcasts need, not redness. This is why intensity does not equal magnetism. In fact, intensity often collapses magnetism because it destabilizes the very state required for attraction. Think about the moments in your life when things arrived effortlessly. Opportunities, connections, ideas, even love. They did not appear when you were desperate. They appeared when you were absorbed, grounded, present, or even indifferent. That is not coincidence. It is pattern. Philosophers have brushed against this paradox for centuries. The Stoics warned that attachment to externals enslaves the mind, not because externals are evil, but because dependency fractures inner sovereignty. Eastern traditions echoed this by pointing out that clinging collapses flow. Modern psychology reaches the same conclusion through different language. Need-based motivation keeps the nervous system in a low-grade stress response, and stress systems do not create expansively. They conserve. They defend. They repeat. When you chase something from that state, every thought and action is subtly contaminated with urgency. Even your optimism becomes brittle. You visualize the outcome, but your body does not believe it because your baseline emotional identity has not shifted. This is why manifestation techniques fail silently. The conscious mind repeats affirmations while the subconscious broadcasts contradiction. And reality responds to the dominant signal, not the spoken one. This is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable, because it implies responsibility at a level most people are not ready to accept. It means your results are not a referendum on your worth, but they are an honest mirror of your internal coherence. It also means that effort, by itself, is not virtuous. Effort can be avoidance. It can be a way to stay busy instead of present. Hustle culture glorifies this because it keeps people exhausted enough not to notice that they are running in circles. The deeper truth is simpler and harsher. Nothing external can stabilize an unstable internal state. You can temporarily distract it, impress it, stimulate it, but you cannot heal it with outcomes. That is why people reach milestones and feel strangely flat. The emotional baseline snaps back because identity did not move. This is not failure. It is physics. States precede experiences. Identity precedes behavior. Being precedes having. When teachers like Bob Proctor spoke about paradigms, they were pointing to this exact mechanism, though many listeners reduced it to positive thinking. A paradigm is not a thought. It is a state of being that selects thoughts, emotions, and actions automatically. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. An identity is not what you say you are. It is what your nervous system expects as normal. This is where desire must be recontextualized. Desire aligned with identity feels calm. Desire misaligned with identity feels urgent. One invites. The other demands. The former expands your field. The latter contracts it. And here is the contradiction that shakes people awake. The moment you stop needing a desire to validate you, you become capable of receiving it. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped collapsing beneath it. Desire becomes a direction, not a deficiency. You are no longer asking reality to fix you. You are allowing reality to meet you. This subtle shift is why embodiment matters more than visualization. You do not attract what you think about most. You attract what your body believes is safe, familiar, and congruent. If abundance feels foreign, the system will unconsciously reject it. If love feels unsafe, it will be sabotaged. If success threatens identity, it will be delayed. This is not punishment. It is protection. The system preserves coherence above all else. Once you see this, effort transforms. Action no longer feels like pushing against resistance. It feels like following gravity. The chase dissolves not because you gave up, but because there is nothing left to prove. And in that space, something almost offensive to the striving mind begins to happen. Reality starts cooperating. Not dramatically at first. Quietly. Coincidences increase. Decisions feel cleaner. Timing improves. The field reorganizes because the signal stabilized. This is the end of chasing and the beginning of resonance. And it sets the stage for a far more radical realization, one that dismantles the action-first myth entirely and reveals why consciousness, not effort, is the true architect of outcomes. The tragedy is that people chase the symbols while ignoring the states that generate them. They attempt to harvest fruit without tending the soil, and then wonder why the tree resists them. This video is not about wanting less. It is about understanding why wanting, as you have been taught to do it, is the very thing blocking the flow. Once you see that, something subtle but irreversible happens. Effort softens. Urgency dissolves. And the question shifts from "how do I get what I want?" to something far more dangerous and far more powerful. Who am I being that makes my desires unnecessary to chase? When that shift occurs, the mechanics of reality begin to reorganize themselves quietly, almost invisibly, and what once felt distant starts behaving as if it knows where you are. What most people do not expect is that once the chase dissolves, action does not disappear. It becomes precise. This is where the second illusion collapses, and it is more dangerous than the first. We are conditioned to believe that action is the primary lever of change, that if results are not appearing, the solution must be more effort, better strategy, tighter discipline. This belief is seductive because it gives the ego something familiar to grip. If action is the cause, then exhaustion feels meaningful. But this is not how reality actually organizes itself. Action is never the origin point. It is a downstream expression. Every movement you make is already decided by something subtler that happened before you lifted a finger. This is why two people can perform similar actions with radically different outcomes. One struggles, the other seems carried. The difference is not intelligence, luck, or even persistence. The difference is state. Consciousness precedes behavior, and behavior merely reveals the level of consciousness that generated it. This is not metaphysical poetry. It is observable structure. You can see it in athletes, leaders, artists, and scientists. Their actions look effortless not because they are passive, but because they are congruent. They are not fighting themselves internally while trying to move forward externally. When consciousness shifts, perception shifts with it, and perception determines which actions even become visible options. This is why trying to take different actions without changing identity rarely works for long. The same internal lens keeps selecting the same patterns, just dressed in new tactics. The hierarchy is ruthless and simple. First comes consciousness, the state of being you inhabit. From that state arises perception, what you notice, ignore, interpret, and prioritize. From perception emerges action, which feels like choice, but is actually selection. And from action, reality arranges outcomes. Most people attempt to start at the bottom of this chain. They try to manipulate outcomes by forcing action, or worse, by reacting to circumstances and calling that strategy. This is why effort plateaus. There is a ceiling to how much force a nervous system can generate before it collapses into burnout, avoidance, or self-sabotage. When you hit that ceiling, the mind concludes that something is wrong with you, not realizing that you are trying to solve a structural problem at the wrong level. You cannot override consciousness with willpower. Willpower is still a product of state. This is why motivation fluctuates. It is not unreliable because you are weak. It is unreliable because it is state-dependent. A contracted state produces inconsistent drive. An expanded state produces coherence. This explains a phenomenon that confuses people for years. When they finally figure things out, opportunities seem to arrive before effort. They say things like, "I don't know why this is working now, I'm not even trying harder." That is the tell. The trying was never the missing ingredient. The state was. Philosophers hinted at this long before neuroscience could map it. The ancient Hermetic principle that the universe is mental was not mystical escapism. It was a statement about causality. Mind precedes matter. The internal organizes the external. Modern science circles the same truth from another angle. The observer effect shows that potential exists before form, and observation collapses it into experience. But observation is not neutral. It is filtered through expectation, belief, and identity. This means your consciousness is not just witnessing reality. It is selecting which possibilities solidify. This is why two people can face the same circumstance and exit with entirely different lives. One sees threat, the other sees signal. One freezes, the other moves. One repeats, the other evolves. The actions they take feel like choices, but they are expressions of the level of consciousness they inhabit. This is also why reacting to reality is the most subtle form of self-betrayal. Reaction places circumstance above consciousness. It says, "This event decides who I am now." Response, by contrast, restores hierarchy. It says, "I decide who I am, and this event must organize itself around that." The world rewards the second posture not because it is arrogant, but because it is coherent. Coherence is power. Incoherence leaks energy. This is where effort-based culture becomes quietly destructive. It trains people to believe that grinding is noble even when it is misaligned. It confuses movement with progress and noise with signal. People stay busy enough not to notice that their internal state has not changed in years. Their goals evolve, their strategies evolve, but their baseline identity remains intact, so reality keeps returning familiar lessons in different costumes. When consciousness shifts, action becomes obvious. You stop asking what to do and start recognizing what cannot be avoided. The right actions feel inevitable, not stressful. They require courage, but not force. This is why true breakthroughs often look boring from the outside. There is no frenzy, no dramatic struggle. Just clarity followed by movement. This also explains why calm people are disproportionately effective. Calm is not the absence of ambition. It is the absence of internal conflict. A calm system can perceive more information, regulate emotion, and act with precision. A frantic system narrows vision and repeats survival patterns. This is why states like peace, presence, and acceptance are not spiritual luxuries. They are functional advantages. They restore the correct hierarchy of creation. Consciousness leads. Perception follows. Action aligns. Reality responds. Once this hierarchy is restored, effort stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like flow. You are no longer trying to bend the world. You are allowing the world to meet you at the level you occupy. This is where magnetism replaces force. And it brings us to the final, most counterintuitive truth of all. The state that attracts the most is not excitement, intensity, or positivity, but something far quieter, far less celebrated, and far more powerful. The tragedy is that people chase the symbols while ignoring the states that generate them. They attempt to harvest fruit without tending the soil, and then wonder why the tree resists them. This video is not about wanting less. It is about understanding why wanting, as you have been taught to do it, is the very thing blocking the flow. Once you see that, something subtle but irreversible happens. Effort softens. Urgency dissolves. And the question shifts from "how do I get what I want?" to something far more dangerous and far more powerful. Who am I being that makes my desires unnecessary to chase? When that shift occurs, the mechanics of reality begin to reorganize themselves quietly, almost invisibly, and what once felt distant starts behaving as if it knows where you are.